Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. We should say welcome back. So after we kicked this off last year, we had a 2-month hiatus. People enjoying the summer, so I want to say thank you for coming out and joining us for our second season of Storytellers New Haven. My name is Kevin Walton, and this is...
I'm Karen Du Bois Walton.
Okay, and before we begin, tonight we're excited to have 2 wonderful storytellers. I think you're going to be filled by what they have to tell you. But we just want to think, a lot of stuff happened, huh? A lot of stuff going on in the world? It's been a summer, right? A lot of
It's
stuff.
good to be back in this space.
Right. So we, as we were preparing for this, we talked about the fact that there's just been a lot of negative energy out in the world, right? So we're happy to be back in a space where, people are connected or trying to connect, and at the very least, we know that these are people that want to kind of move forward and do the work that we have to do, that we have to be able to live amongst each other. So, for us, lots of things happen, but a lot of you know that we are now empty nesters, Karen and I. So that means we had a lot of time to talk about storytellers. And one of the things, I put it up yesterday, and this quote actually came from Karen. She talked about hearing other people's stories helps us to see another perspective and reminds us that the way we see the world is not the only way the world is to be seen. And I think that as we remind, as we kick off our second season, that's what Storytellers is about. That we live in a city, 130,000 people. That means there are 130,000 stories. And depending if you know the people like I know, there might be 131,000 stories, right? And the fact that we just want to hear people's stories, we want to connect, right? We want to be able to move forward by getting to know you. I was talking to Jamano earlier about that, so hopefully we'll be able to get that point across tonight. All right.
So the whole purpose of Storytellers, the reason we founded it, was to build a stronger sense of community. And our tagline is we're building community one story at a time. It works because wonderful people like you come out each month and want to be a part of it. And individuals volunteer to tell stories. And so that's something as you're signing in. If you think you might want to tell, please check the yes box or tell us yes on the form. And we will reach out to you. We're putting together a whole calendar for what the year will look like in terms of our storytellers. We want to always acknowledge the support that has helped us to do this. So you are in contact right now. If you've never been in this space, please come back and visit. This is an amazing community organization that offers job skills training and after-school programs. One of their focuses is around culinary arts, and so we are in the culinary space. The refreshments are provided by students who are in the culinary program. They have provided this for us. And you can come by here any day, any weekday at lunchtime and have lunch in the Orchid Cafe. So please support Concat. They make the space graciously available to us. And this is also supported by the Bill Graustein and the Graustein Memorial Fund, who generously supports the work that we do and really sparked a lot of our interest in storytelling. And then our technology partner is Kevin Ewing and his team at Studios. All right, we're working on it. And they do all the technology support for us. So please support local businesses, local entrepreneurs. We're doing great things in this community. Who's a first timer? Who's never been here before? Oh wow, wonderful. All right, so the people whose hands aren't up. You saw who was a first timer. You're sitting next to them. Welcome them. Help them feel a sense of community here. That's what it's all about. Please don't leave here not having learned the name of somebody who you hadn't met before. You'll certainly leave here knowing a couple of their stories, but help us in the sense of building community. You can always follow us on social media. Join our Facebook page. We do have the schedule over on the side so that you'll know our upcoming sessions. And let's get to it. Our format, as you'll hear 2 stories, we'll have the first storyteller coming up. She'll tell a story that's about 20 minutes. When she wraps up, we'll open it up for questions. If she's open to questions, you can ask her some questions about the story. Anything you'd like to know a little bit more about. We'll do a few minutes of questions, and then we'll switch to our second teller. So with that, let's bring up our first teller. We are first going to hear from Ms. Erika Bogan. And I can't wait to hear what Erika is going to share with us. is a local New Havener here, and a wonderful person who's been at Storytellers in the past and said she wanted to tell. So please come join us.
I would like to thank Karen and Kevin for having me. As she said, my name is Erika Bogan. I am a veteran of the City of New Haven Department of Fire Service. I am now in my 21st year. I know, right? And retirement is looking better and better these days, so we'll see what happens. The story that I decided to tell does actually center around my work at the fire department. It's of a interesting tale between myself and my longtime friend, Linda. When I entered the fire academy in December of 1997, Linda and I met. And it was an interesting time because there were approximately 55 people in our academy class, and we were the only 2 black women in the entire class. And there were 2 other women also who were white. So it was a challenge keeping ourselves motivated in a job that's predominantly male and predominantly white, and just that whole thing. So we immediately bonded. We became friends, and as we're talking, comparing notes, like, okay, where do you live? Well, where do you live? That kind of thing. We realized that our kids had actually been playing together before we ever met. Because I lived on one side of the street, and her mom lived like across the street, but 3 doors down. So, little kids are, so open and trusting. They're like hanging out, and we had no idea. So we immediately bonded and became great friends, and we went on to graduate the academy. And at some point, we were partners. She went on to become a paramedic, and I'm an EMT, so we'd partner together. We saw each other through a whole lot, through children dying, through delivering babies, through anything that you could possibly think of medically. And then in the summer of 2008, her son died. She only had 1 son. I have 3. Her son died the summer of 2008. Very tragically, he was hit by a train. And I remember getting the call and rushing to her house. And the next day, I went there, and I said, well, Linda. She's like, what? I'm like, well, what are you going to do? And she was like, about what? I'm like, what are you going to do about Brendan? And she looked at me, and a single tear rolled down her face. And it was at that moment that I knew that I had to help her. I had to do something. So I ended up, I went from helping to planning his whole service. And it went really good. And years later, after, try to help her rebuild and all that kind of thing, it was to a point where she would call me, and all you heard was like screaming and crying and screaming and crying. And I'm like, Linda, I'm at work, but I'm gonna get you help. So I'd call my friend Michelle. Hey, Michelle, Linda's not good. Can you go help her? And we would just take turns sitting with her and letting her, grieve and mourn, because that was her only son. She lived for her son. And he happened to have left behind a pregnant girlfriend. So now Brandy is here, and she did everything for Brandy. That was the only piece of her son she had left. And when I tell you the sun rose and set on that little girl, she did everything. She moved out of like a not great neighborhood, and she bought a house in Hamden, not far from where I am. And everything revolved around Brandy. And she was just like the most amazing grandmother. And then the morning of January 11th, 2015, I woke up to several text messages and several missed phone calls, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? I knew it had something to do with work, because it was like all work people, the chief of the department and all. I'm like, what is going on? So I called the chief back, and he told me that she died. She was found dead in her yard in the middle of the night in January, and they tried to get her back because we're both in the EMS community. So everybody knew her, as everybody knows me that's in that community. And they worked very feverishly for a long time to get her back, and they didn't get her back. So the day after that, her dad called me. he's a retired captain for New Haven Police, and he was like, Erika, you did such a good job with Brendan's funeral. Do you think you can do it again for Linda? And I'm like, wow. It was a lot. It was a whole lot. In that 1 week, I planned her service, fielding calls from the governor's office, Blumenthal. Oh yeah, hi, we're bringing like 3 people. Can you reserve us seats? Blumenthal, Nancy Wyman, like people from all over. The American Red Cross. Oh, hi, we're gonna set up a van outside to, give out, hot beverages for people waiting to come inside. Just tell us when and where you need us. The police department, we're gonna shadow the whole family for like 12 hours. Let us know when and where. Same thing with AMR. Let us know when I had so many balls in the air, it was crazy. And I think that because of that, I sort of pushed my grieving aside because I had a job to do. I had a whole bunch to do between coordinating everything, soup to nuts, for this funeral. And it just makes me think about her and all the fun that we had. I remember one day, we were partners, and we were working out of the hill on Howard Avenue. And we left the firehouse probably around shift change, which is like between 7 and 8 in the morning. And we were just running so much, just like from call to call to call to call to call. And we still hadn't gotten back to the firehouse yet, and this was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Imagine leaving the firehouse and you're not back for hours and hours. We were starving. And this one particular day, I had a craving for Hostess cupcakes. Oh, it was so bad. Firefighters we eat the best and the worst all at the same time. It's terrible. The big steak dinners versus little corny little Hostess cupcakes. So I wanted these orange cupcakes so bad. I was like, Linda, I want them, I need them. And she was like, what? And she looked over at me and her lips were ashy. And I started laughing because her lips never got ashy unless she was hungry. So I'm teasing her about being hungry. So we finally go to the Air Rights Garage. There's a little convenience store there. And I finally got my orange cupcakes, but I'm driving because typically medics don't drive, the EMT drives. So we leave the Air Rights Garage, we take the left onto Frontage Road, we hit a bump, and one of my cupcakes dropped out and hit the floor. And she looked at me, she was like, and when I tell you, she laughed so hard and so long that I was mad at her for like a whole day because I was hungry, I wanted my cupcakes. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So, but we saw each other through a whole lot. We helped raise each other's kids. She thought of my kids as her nephews, and I, of course, embraced her son, also as my own. It's not an easy job that we do. It's most often a thankless job because when you think about it, when somebody calls 911 and you go to their house, they're not having a good day for whatever reason, whether it's them or they're calling for somebody else or they're a bystander trying to help somebody in need. So, and it's said that the relationship that you build with, the people that you work with in that particular career, you become very close with. And you have a bond that sometimes spouses don't understand. I mean, I've been mean mugged by wives citywide. No, seriously, like I pick up the phone, hi, Engine 11, and then they get quiet. Hi, is so-and-so there? Oh, they're on a call, can you try them back in a few minutes? And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, no, I really do work here. Because people think that, it's not, women have no place in the fire service, but that's not true. We have, I think, a certain ability to nurture and sort of mother, kind of, so to speak, maybe a sexual assault victim or somebody who's having a rough time with their pregnancy or even a child who, sort of clings closer to women than they would to a man. So now that I'm nearing the end of my career, I think about her often. Whenever something good or juicy happens, I pick up my phone like, oh my God, she's not here. So even 3 years later, she still is with me. And these days, whenever I have to ride the unit, I will go and I will find my dumb little orange cupcakes and I will eat one and then I will throw the other one away for her laughter. It's just interesting, the grieving process. The grieving process, I feel like, is very, very personal. And I feel like nobody should be able to tell you how to grieve. It's very intimate and it's very personal, and however you have to get through it is however you get through it. I can honestly say that I probably haven't been through the whole process yet, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm here. Maybe it's cathartic in some way, because it's almost like who helps the helper. You know, I'm always at work, always responding to calls, always dealing with fires, medicals, you know, whatever, you know, may come up. And a lot of the times you get so caught up into that it's hard to accept help when you need it. So I would probably implore everybody here, because it's been a common theme lately, that if you need help, whatever it is, it's okay to not be okay. I have had many days where I wasn't okay, but I never reached out, because I think there's an unfortunate stigma, which is sad, that, oh, well, they need help, oh, they need therapy. And then, you know, I grew up with, Black people don't go to therapy, they go to church. True, but that's what it is. Okay, cool. But it's okay to reach out. It's okay to need therapy. It's okay to talk to somebody, even if it's somebody in your circle, because people can be so divisive sometimes and take your information and just, you know, disseminate it out into the wild. And, you know, I get that. But, you know, at the same time, you know, people are suffering indeed. And their suffering is real to them, you know, whatever happens. If I've learned nothing else about this job, I have absolutely learned that. When somebody wants to convince me that they're having chest pain, but their EKG is perfectly normal, and their vitals are stable, and, you know, that kind of thing, okay, it's not cardiac, but whatever is happening to you is real to you. So we're going to treat it as such. It's just been a long, long ride, especially because I don't feel like there's closure with Linda. The Emmy ruled her death as, I need to get it right, hypothermia because of extreme intoxication. And I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. I don't. Because if you knew Linda, she could hold her alcohol. She could drink with the best of them and, you know, be fine. You know, she might, you know, need a ride home or what have you. But the idea that she froze to death just because she was drunk is just, it feels impossible. It feels impossible. And I wish I could say more about that, but out of respect for her family, I can't, I'm sorry, but I just feel like, you know, maybe this would be easier if I had more of a sense of closure. And it kind of makes me like, why isn't anybody pursuing this? Why, you know, why do people seem content, like the police department that investigated it, the Emmy, why do you seem so content to just let this go? You know, I felt like it was a situation that needed further investigation, and it was just sort of basic, and it took, you know, a few months. I think January she passed, and then the Emmys ruling came, I think, in like March, something like that. And I didn't hear about it until I was at work. So that was another teary day at work because it was on the news. And, you know, I just, closure, you know, would make it easier. But, you know, if that never comes, then I have to make myself content with the fact that, you know, we were friends for a long time. Because it felt, we were friends for 17 years. And we said that we were going to do this career together, that we were going to pass the National Registry EMT test together. It was 100 questions, 100 of the hardest questions I've ever had about EMT, and they gave us 3 hours to do it. So we both passed on the first shot, and our goal was to get through this career and retire healthy together. And, you know, now that's not happening. So I think about her all the time, and when I retire, I'm definitely, most definitely, going to dedicate my retirement to her. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Erika.
You're welcome.
I'm still struggling that you're a 21-year veteran.
I am.
I wouldn't have guessed it. I wouldn't have guessed it. So are you up for some questions
Yeah,
about your story?
absolutely.
Great, absolutely. So hearing Erika's story, I'm wondering what you're curious about. What would you like to ask her or know a little bit more about? Anybody have a question?
I think what you mentioned about buying cupcakes, eating one and throwing one away, that really had an impact on me. Just because I think it makes sense, like we have to try to
I don't have a process. It sort of comes in waves. Like her birthday's in April, so that's a wave. Different things that happen throughout the year, different things that happen at work. Interestingly enough, I was, my most recent assignment is Lighthouse Road, Engine 16, right near the beach, and that was her last assignment. So her gear bag is hanging, on the wall, on the apparatus floor. So when I see it, I'm like, oh, Linda, Oh, it comes in waves.
I didn't realize that you were so well. Did a great job. 21 years. Thank you for your service. One thing that really stood out for me is who helps to help. I've been on the front line of this community, and I've seen back all my life, and messages that we receive as men and boys can take more man that makes you, and I have a good friend that retired from the fire department, and he told me a lot of the stories, right? And, we would compare stories as, somebody, human service worker, and how I internalized, the trauma, like Harris trauma, right? And I could see, he talked about the first-hand trauma that he's experiencing, that men and boys be used because of the stuff in ours, right? And so you want that to surface for me, and so it's like, hear a little more about how you manage, the trauma that you come in contact with.
It's a lot. I mentor the young ladies who are just starting their career on the department, and I tell them all the time, get help if you need it. Because I feel like humans in general aren't really built to see the amount of trauma that we see. I have picked up heads and brought them back to bodies. I have shoved bowels back into stomach cavities. I have done so many different things, and I just feel like we're not necessarily built for that, And when Linda died, I sort of asked myself, because that was trauma like I had never experienced, ever. And, I'm taught to not question God, okay, but I'm like, what is the lesson here? And I think, getting back to your point, the lesson for me, and because they say everything happens for a reason, even though it's unpleasant, I think the lesson for me is that I became more sensitive. I used to be a very sensitive person, but this job tends to harden you to a certain degree, not to the point that you're mean, but just to the point that things don't affect you the way they used to. Like, you could come to me and say, oh, I got a new job. And the normal person would be like, oh my God, that's so great. I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. You know what I mean? So it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? So I think the lesson for me is that, and what I take away from Linda dying is that it gave me back my sensitivity. And as far as dealing with trauma, they sent, grief, counseling teams and EAP and all that kind of stuff to us. And I actually took advantage of it for 3 sessions because I had an anxiety attack as a result of her dying a month after she died. And I don't know if it worked for me. Maybe I'm weird and therapy just doesn't move me that way, or maybe I have to find another therapist. I don't know, but singing helps me. Music definitely helps me. Thinking about her, remembering her, talking about her with her family, who I'm still very close with, helps me. Just different things here and there that you find that work.
I was curious, as you talked about her granddaughter.
Yes.
Whether you have an ongoing relationship with her and how you help keep Linda alive for her.
I would like to have, but at this point I don't. Because I think she's 9 now. Yeah, she's 9 now.
My question is, how did you explain to your kids at the time when your friend passed away, anything like that? Like, how did you relay it to say to your kids?
How did I relay it?
Yeah, like your friend died, whatever the case is. Maybe you said that in my training, but how did you talk to your kids about that?
Are you talking about her son or her?
Your kids, talk to your kids about
When Linda died.
About both incidents or just Linda?
just, well, the kids, actually, the kids died. As they were
Her son.
so they were friends with him.
Yeah.
They played together.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with them to help them deal with the situation?
I just had to sit them down and tell them. I mean, there's no easy way to sugarcoat it. Sometimes you just have to rip the Band-Aid off. And, they were about his age at the time, like late teens, early 20s. And you just have to explain to them that, it was an accident. because there were very unfortunate rumors circulating that it was a suicide, and it absolutely was not. He had everything to live for. He was about to propose to the mother of his child. You know, he was happy, you know, he was working, so, you know, everything was in his favor. So, you know, sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off and say, listen, you know, I got to tell you something. And then just make sure that you're there for them, you know, in the aftermath, because that's what gets people is the aftermath. Think about it, when you have funerals, everybody's around, there's 3,000 people, and then the day after, where is everybody? Everybody just sort of, you know, went away. So it's important to be there for people, you know, after the fact, you know, months, sometimes years after, because you never know how people are processing or, you know, what they're feeling or what may trigger them or what they're going through.
Please join me in thanking Erika for sharing her story.
Thank you.